Nigeria discovered oil before Dubai. It had more people, more land, and more natural resources. Dubai, by contrast, was a small fishing port with a harsh desert climate and very little to offer on paper. Today, Dubai is one of the most developed cities in the world, while Nigeria struggles with blackouts, mass immigration, and economic stagnation. So what happened? How did two oil-rich nations end up on such different paths? And more importantly, what does this tell us about leadership, vision, and what it really takes to build a modern state? Nigeria struck oil in 1956. By 1958, it was exporting crude. The 1970s oil boom brought in billions of dollars. At independence, the country had about 45 million people, abundant land, and significant global attention. Today, it sits on 37 billion barrels of proven reserves and has the largest population in Africa, over 220 million. Dubai discovered oil in 1996, a full decade after Nigeria. At the time, its population was barely 180,000. Its oil reserves were modest, less than a tenth of Nigeria's. But while Nigeria saw oil as a lifeline, Dubai saw it as a launchpad. GDP per capita tells the story in numbers. As of 2022, the UAE's GDP per capita stood at roughly $47,000, while Nigeria's was around $2,400. This was never just about oil. It was about what you do with it. Dubai leadership took a long-term view. Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum invested heavily in infrastructure. He oversaw the creation of Jebel Ali Port, Emirates Airline, and the first free economic zones. Today, oil contributes less than 5% of Dubai's GDP. Nigeria, meanwhile, became locked into a cycle of dependency. Oil accounts for over 70% of national revenue. The government has spent billions on fuel subsidies and recurrent expenditures, while critical sectors like power, education, and transportation remain underfunded. The Lagos Light Rail was proposed in the early 1980s. Construction finally began in 2008. As of 2023, only partial sections are operational. Dubai, in contrast, began planning its metro in 2005 and launched it by 2009. Corruption has been a defining feature of Nigeria's oil economy. Between 1993 and 1998, military ruler Sani Abacha looted over $5 billion. As of 2023, $3.65 billion has been recovered. Former Petroleum Minister Dezani Alison Madeke faces accusation of embezzling $2.5 billion. The African Development Bank estimates Nigeria loses around $18 billion annually to corruption. Let's put that into context. $18 billion could fund Nigeria's entire federal education budget for more than 5 years. A 2022 report by Transparency International ranked Nigeria 150 out of 180 countries in corruption perception, far below the UAE, which is ranked 27th. As Chinua Achebe once said, the trouble with Nigeria is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. Dubai's governance model is centralized. It allows for long-term planning and rapid implementation, even if it lacks democratic accountability. The UAE ranks 16th globally in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business Index. Investors are attracted by clear rules, tax incentives and infrastructures. Nigeria has over 20 different economic plans since independence. Vision 2010, Vision 2020, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, all were ambitious, but few were fully executed. Leadership turnover is high and policy reversal are frequent. A major investor once said, "The greatest risk in Nigeria isn't terrorism or crime, it's unpredictability." Compare that to Dubai consistency. When Dubai announced the Expo 2020, it began preparations years in advance, completing infrastructure, logistics, and public transport ahead of schedule. Nigeria is incredibly diverse, over 250 ethnic groups, hundreds of languages, and a federal structure that often creates friction over power and resources. This diversity is beautiful, but it also complicates governance. Debates around resources control in the Niger Delta or quota system in education and employment shows how identity politics often override national interests. In Dubai, centralized control enables uniform planning. It's not democratic, but it's efficient. This comes at a cost: limited political freedom, tightly controlled press, and restriction on labor unions. But the trade-off, for now, has been economic growth. Nigeria is rich in talent. Its music, literature, and tech scenes are global forces, but the system often suffocates the potential. Take Japa, the wave of mass immigration. In 2023 alone, over 3,000 Nigerian doctors moved to the UK. The Nigerian Medical Association estimates that over 60% of Nigerian-trained doctors now practice abroad. A survey by Afrobarometer showed that nearly 64% of Nigerian youth will leave the country if given the chance. Unemployment is over 33%. Inflation reached 22% in 2023. The Naira continues to devalue. With deteriorating infrastructure and insecurity, many see no future at home. This vacuum has also fueled darker consequences. Nigeria has become infamous for online fraud. In 2019, the FBI charged 80 Nigerians in a $46 million scam ring. Scams, also Yahoo, are often glamorized in pop culture. Some even have dedicated songs. Behind this are stories of desperation, disillusionment, and a broken economy. As one anonymous Yahoo boy told Al Jazeera, "Nobody wants to do this, but in Nigeria, it's either this or nothing." Let's be clear, Dubai is not a utopia. Over 85% of Dubai's population are foreign workers, many from South Asia. Under the kafala system, some face poor conditions, wage theft, and limited rights. Freedom of speech is restricted. Protests are banned. There is no elected parliament. But its leadership prioritized long-term national development over short-term popularity. It made the country work for investors, for tourists, for its citizens. This isn't a binary story of success versus failure. Nigeria's challenges are deep, but not permanent. The country still has the numbers: a young, dynamic population, abundant natural resources, cultural capital, tech-savvy innovators, a diaspora that sends back over $20 billion annually. But for this strength to mean anything, they must be matched by leadership with vision, policy with continuity, and a state that puts competence over chronism. The path is long, but it is not closed. Oil was never the problem, leadership was. Dubai turned a barren desert into a symbol of ambition. Nigeria had all the raw material but lost its way. The question now is not just what happened, but what's next? Will Nigeria rise beyond potential or remain a cautionary tale? Only time and choices will tell.